It's Monday, glorious Monday. Let's talk about some setups for Setup Monday. I'm going to talk about some usual suspects, talk about Link and DOT a little at the end. But my lens right now is more down than up. And I'll discuss why here. But for BTC, immediately I go to trend following indicators. My favorite stuff, pitchforks, people love to hate, right? That's my bread and butter. So we pick 3 points, we get a rate of change. The median line here, the yellow, is the expected rate of change at any given time point. It's a magnet for price. So if we do drop here, I'm expecting a touch of this. I mean, ideally, Q1 is bearish. We get a touch of the yellow, okay? A little hint of the yellow snow in Q1. And then we bounce to the promised land of the other side of this top pitchfork throughout Q2. I mean, that's my map in my head. So anything that happens right now, I don't really care about. You know, we can even make new highs here, and I don't really care because Q2 is where it's at in general, based on seasonality. Arguably, that lines up with the U.S. printing stuff, Biden administration coming over. You know, there's some macro stuff, money printing wise, that sort of lines up with that, stimulus packages, etc. So we'll see how perfect the seasonality holds up. But ideally, between now and the 29th, we hit some doom. Hit some doom business, tons of news articles about, you know, BTC is dead, it's a bubble, blah, blah, blah. All the while, people waiting with money on the sidelines buy somewhere around 26, 27, 28, 29, somewhere around there. We sort of shuffle along for the next few months. Everything's super choppy, and then leading into Q2, we find our bullish stride once again. That would be my perfect ideal scenario. So this structure doesn't look like anything really, doesn't look bearish. Arguably it's some sort of flag, so you could say, okay, that's bullish. We'll zoom in on that in a second. Here's the 4-hour cloud, something which I've been watching very closely over the past few days. If we dip below the 4-hour cloud, that'll be a short entry for me. If we get a bullish TK recross, right now it's still bullish, but this is going to cross bearish here in a few more candlesticks. So basically what I'm looking for here is a cross recross. If that happens, I'm ready to go long. If that doesn't happen, I'm not touching it on the long side. If we're below the cloud, that's where I want to short. Ideally, everything goes bearish. Cloud goes red. All this twists bearish. And then the entry is way more obvious. You know, the first thing I always want is a bullish TK cross recross, but the second thing I'm looking for is something like this, where everything's flipping bearish. Cloud's about to flip bearish. It actually didn't in this case. Then we get this slow rise above, and then boom. You know, that's the easy trade to take. Something else I'm watching on the 4-hour is, again, I don't know if this is necessarily a flag, if it's necessarily head and shoulders, fractals repeatedly over and over and over again. Whatever it is, there's a clear support here. And if we're below that support, much like if we're below the cloud, I mean, we all know the answer to that question, right? Like, this is going down if we break that support. Maybe it's a wick in an hour, maybe it's a 10% wick on the hourly, whatever. I think at that point the market will have an answer as far as where this consolidation is going. So there's very little volume support kind of until 23. I mean, that's so far down from here. There's some medium supports here just on volume, you can see. But overall, we've had very little volume up here in this range. And you see this when we're consolidating, getting ready for a move. You're going to see volume explode here once the move is decided. So that's something else to watch for. And, you know, we're just not going to break 20K. I don't care what you say. It's not going to happen. I will not allow it. I will be there at 19,999 with my last stand. Lots of support here, 23. And then lastly for BTC, 4-hour Bollinger Bands are also quite tight, indicating a move pending rather soon-ish. Here's ETH. And ETH on the pitchfork, you know, just looking at where it is compared to BTC, looks ready for a retrace more than BTC does. I would love to purchase some ETH sub 700. You know, that's a violent drop from here. Basically Eiffel Tower, Burj Khalifa sort of structure. Anything close to the 200-day moving average seems good. I mean, these yearly pivots are so close together that, you know, if we break this R1, it's pretty simple in my mind. You know, we're going to retest this eventually. But ideally we bop around here for the quarter. Again, like this quarter to me is a wash in general. It doesn't matter. Q2 is where it's at. the least likely probability is that this keeps going. You know, I like 2,500 by end of year for ETH, just based on yearly pivots. And I should say I like 100K, 6 figures, end of year for BTC. Should all things go according to plan. So overall, I'm nonplussed here. I've got no skin in the leverage game for ETH right now. Here's the 4-hour cloud. You can see the signal to noise ratio here has been terrible because we've gotten, so here's a decent long, right? And then you get your cross, then you get recross. Okay, that doesn't go anywhere. Recross doesn't go anywhere. Recross finally goes somewhere. So this is what, 2 out of 5 hit rate over the past couple months. So again, on ETH here, the 4-hour, it's telling you the long is okay because we're cross bullish on the TK lines. Above the cloud is green, etc., etc. Another way to read into this is that trend is flat because everything here is flat. Cloud's flat, TK lines are flat. So again, it's a much easier trade to just wait for the recross on this TK stuff, or wait for higher highs. That's also a decent play. But to me, the structure is just sideways nonsense. Someone else was pointing this out on Twitter. Potential diamond top. This is just the 12-hour time. The time frame doesn't really matter, but 12-hour looks like a diamond top reversal potentially, which would bring us to 750, 800. No lower than, I mean, really 550 would be nuts, but the percentage drops on this stuff potentially is quite large. And that doesn't mean it happens in one candlestick, but that's the eventual final destination. Switching gears to Link a little bit. I mean, this is the textbook pitchforkiness you want to see. 3 points rate of change, just a year. This is 2019, right? So boom, boom, boom. This is why you expect $60 Link by September. This is why you expect higher highs. I mean, all this is just painting perfectly how to trade a pitchfork, what you expect. We're curling into this median line for months. I think Link looks fine long-term here on the USD pair. 3x from here is decently reasonable by September, for sure. You know, it may overshoot that, it may undershoot that, but the reason it's 60 by September is that's where the median line hits that price target, and the R5 is also the yearly pivot at 60. And lastly, kind of looking at DOT, just because a lot of people are looking at DOT. I mean, clearly, so this is the Kraken DOT USD 4-hour chart. And there was kind of just no volume, and then all of a sudden there was just explosion of volume as DOT sort of made multi-month highs or multi-week highs or whatever. It did have this head and shoulders type pattern before the breakout, and then it just kept going, right? It had a bullish TK recross above the cloud, bullish Kuma breakout before it catapulted up. It's definitely looking a little bit hot, obviously. Cloud likes 13 as far as a retrace target. So I think the trend is quote-unquote untacked. Something with DOT you have to be careful of, like any of the staking coins. If 80% of the network's being staked or whatever the ridiculous amount is, there's not a lot of float on the exchanges. Very similar to Tezos, for example. So if there's not a lot on the order book, very quickly price can get out of hand to the upside because there's just nothing for sale. So that's one thing to take into consideration with some of this newer stuff that has staking capabilities. So what are you watching this week? What did I miss? What do you like? Let me know in the comments. Happy trading.